All rolling. Now, I was amazed to learn 1981 you went straight from teacher training college into St Lawrence's. I don't know if one can sort of remember the feeling, because it must have been nervous but joyful. And
the fact that there were so few teachers in the school made it very easy, actually, because you got to talk to, there were only 5 there when I arrived. I was number 6, so, and they were lovely. A lot of them were country girls like myself. Catherine obviously was Greystones, or Greystones native, so that was nice too. She had all the local knowledge, but it was an easy transition, actually, believe it or not. I think if it were now, it's a big school into which to try and integrate and stuff like that, but not back then. No, it was very easy.
Well, I know that you, for you, to a degree, coming over Winegates, the sea sealed the deal, really, in a way.
Yeah, in the paper they said it was Kilkenny, but it was actually Greystones, the small harbour that was there at the time. It was just like something from a picture postcard. It was a beautiful, bright, sunny day, and I come from the heartland of the country, like in Kilkenny, which is glorious in its own way, but the sea was such a draw. It really was, you know.
I'm kind of thinking too with teachers, you know, there you are, you grow up in Kilkenny, you're a little similar to Lawrence at the time, a little small school, you study in Drumcondra, and you end up in Greystones. Is it just a given that in that line of work you go where the work is, or I don't know whether you had thoughts of I'd like to be somewhere like this?
Well, back then, a lot of students, which are new teachers, new NQTs they call them now, they did was maybe stay around for the first, back then you had 2 years probationary period to do, so they would stay in the Dublin area where there were more schools and more availability for 2 years, and then some of them naturally sort of gravitated back down home to where they belonged, or where they felt they'd like to settle again. For me, I met a chap within my first year being up here, and that sort of settled the deal.
Well, also you were blessed that it is always sort of felt that people will move naturally from school to school, that staying in one place for 40 years is generally not done, but you had the kind of the joy, we'll say, of the fact that the school changed so much. It was like being in different schools.
All the way through, yeah, all the way. I mean, the year after I started, another girl came actually who happened to be, believe it or not, we didn't know, neither of us knew at the time that we were doing interviews for the place, and she had shared a flat with me in 3rd year. So she was the next person behind me. She came in late September, but the next year they were coming in clumps of 2 and 3. So the school grew really rapidly at that time. And I think when you're young as well, you take every experience on the chin, you just keep rolling with it, and it takes you maybe somewhere between 5 and 6 years to really find yourself as an adult. I think when you're just out of college, you know, you're still very much a child. I mean, I was 20 when I started here, so it was easy. And the fact that it kept changing, and the turnover of people was constant, it meant that it refreshed itself year on year. And then of course the kids are great. I mean, they only stayed here for 4 years, so they were in and out the door in no time. You know?
But I'm thinking too that in situations where you do kind of, we say, fall in love with a place, it fits, it sort of works for you and all that, sometimes there's a sort of a moment that you realise, oh, you know, I could do this for the next 40 years, actually, I like it. Or whether it just happened to you, like whether you just sort of, you realise, oh, I've been here for 40 years.
Do you know something? I tell you, I was thinking about it because when I knew I was going to chat to you, and why I got completely hung up on it. I explained before, my dad is a teacher, right, and he loved, and I had a really good experience. I went to school, I have to mention it, with the likes of the Henry Shefflins. It's their Opus Day, or whatever you like to call it. What do they call it? Not Opus Day, their alma mater, isn't that right?
Okay, there you go.
So basically, I came from a very strong background where people liked school very much, and I think when I came here, it was a really good fit, because I had a lot of young teachers with me, and we learned very early on that you didn't have to have children sitting at desks all the time to teach. Some of the girls were Frebel trained, and they had very active learning where you put the kids on the floor, half the class on the floor, half at desks working away, and you were between them. And that followed through the whole way through. That made me absolutely, it was a joy to do, because it was like you were both a pupil and a teacher at the same time. It was fun. It was actually genuinely a fun way to work. It was lovely, really, really. And it sort of has continued all the way in Lawrence's, because just before I finished, I went in a couple of days before Christmas to say hello to some of the teachers and whatever else. And I'd have to say, guys, is the teacher out? But the teacher was on the floor with things. So that's a great recommendation, I think, to see that's the way teaching has gone and learning has gone. It's very interactive, you know.
Well, one of the crucial things your dad said to you about the teaching profession, he was a principal, as you said, is that you should, you know, learn something every day.
Every day. You know, at times you can feel a wee bit overwhelmed. It's a huge responsibility. But I learned early on that at the beginning of the year it's like a mountain to climb, but when you get even as far as Christmas, you look back behind you and you see all the things the children have learned in the couple of months between September and Christmas, and by the time you come to the end of the year, it's really, you're so proud of how far they've come and how far you've come with them, because every class learns differently, every teacher teaches differently, and every year you teach differently. Some years you do a great job on maths, the next year you might say, I had a fantastic year with that class with Irish. Just, it's all made up of individuals, and it makes for a different experience, you know.
I've often thought too, for teachers, you know, because children are such, you know, joyful people, and there's so much magic, that every year you're at the airport to say goodbye to a load of them. It must feel quite difficult, and yet, you know, you must get used to it, but it still must be very difficult to say goodbye to what you feel are almost your kids in a way that you're so, you know.
Every year there's a small bit of a grieving process.
Right.
There genuinely is, because they become your babies. I mean, somebody asked me one time, purely by accident, they said, you know, how many kids have you got? And I said, I've got, I think it was back when we had bigger numbers, I said 28. And they were looking at me, I said, oh, sorry, I'm a teacher. So I was married probably at the time even. But yeah, you do grieve in June, and then the summer gives you time maybe to come to terms with it all, and you're hoping that if they're leaving the school particularly, it's difficult. If they're moving on to another teacher, you get, you know, little waves on the corridor the next year, and little sort of reassurances, you're doing great, guys, I'm so proud. And then you have the whole thing of trying to meet a whole new family of kids, you know. It's every year is different. It's lovely.
I'm guessing the step up from deputy to principal wasn't a huge leap. I don't know whether any kind of second thoughts about it, or any worries? Or?
No, it is a big job. I mean, it's become more onerous in the last. It's more onerous year on year, to be perfectly honest. I think for all principals, I didn't find it too hard. I had a great mentor in Catherine Coveney. She was here for 40 years as principal, and I worked closely with her as deputy for I think it was 15. So that was great. We had a very good relationship. I learned a lot from her, just watching her, watching how she'd manage things, and not being afraid again to say, I don't know, but I can find out. That was a great mantra of Catherine's, you know, if you don't know something, don't chance your arm. Go and find out from somebody who does know. So it wasn't as tough as I thought it would be, but I did miss the spark of the children, I have to say. I liked being in charge, but I missed the children terribly in the office, you know.
Well, I suppose there is a growing concern in Dalgany and Greystones and all that, just given the population boom, just being able to handle, because Laurence is a much loved school, as many of the schools are, and you know, people who've grown up here and people arriving in would love their kids to go there. That must have been difficult too, to sort of know that it just isn't possible necessarily to satisfy every request. And
I suppose so. I mean, if it's your first child, it's always a little bit of a leap of faith to go to any school, even if you're a past pupil. A lot of our past pupils are beginning to, that's how I knew it was time to leave, when you're getting the next generation through, they're bringing their own children here. But I mean, there are excellent schools in the area anyway, to be perfectly honest, you know, and sometimes what's meant for you won't pass you, they say. We try to accommodate as many as we could. I used to tell the inspector we have the kids on shelves here if needs be, to try and fit them all in, but you know, everything settles eventually, you know. It does settle down. So
now we should say you're keeping in the world of teaching. You're the chair of the board of management at Pres, where your own son goes, but I'm guessing you hopefully have a lot more time to be doing the lovely nothing that you need to do in life as well.
That's the plan, and maybe particularly finishing up at Christmas, you know. I mean, the weather, as you can see, is fairly inclement, so you don't feel quite as guilty if you stay in the house until 11 o'clock having that extra cup of coffee or whatever, but a little bit of nothing and a little bit of something eventually. I deliberately, Pres reached out to me, which was great, and Tom is no longer there. He was there a couple of years ago. He's in second year in college now, but I loved the idea of being able to help, you know, maybe retrospectively bring any experience you had to bear, but I think it's really important for me, not for everybody, not to line up too many events or too many things I have to do, because I've had a lifetime of a very busy career between career, family, everything. It'll be nice to sort of see, can I find things now, or can things find me for the next couple of years, you know?
As we wrap up, very final question. I know there's always going to be a lot of people that would be, you know, a huge help along through the years, and inspirations and just good co-workers and all that. But I know you sort of made a special mention of people like Conor O'Sullivan, like the volunteers, and so there would have been a lot of people, I'm sure, that just became part of the family.
Absolutely, I mean, we've had some great sports coaches over the years. What I loved about Con was is a retired secondary teacher himself, but I mean, he came week on week in all weathers in his sandals. I have to mention Con's sandals. candles. I knew summer had arrived when the socks came off. But he was great. He just turned up and gave of his time. So, willingly and voluntarily and everything else. It's a huge commitment, I suppose. Some people go to the gym, but it's to benefit themselves. Colin was benefiting other children over the years and gave some kids their first introduction to the GAA. Lots of them went on to have huge success in the county and things like that. I remember, I think it was Gina Fishardi I had. He was a great little footballer eventually. But anyway, look, people like that are the people that maybe remain in your memory. They're quiet heroes, I would call them. They're not out front tooting their own horn about how great I am, but they're quietly helping the community the whole time. I thought he was wonderful.
And you're okay with the fact that for the rest of your life, when you walk around Greystones, there's going to be a lot of people who basically see you.
Yeah, I am, absolutely.
It'll be good.
I'd love anybody who knows me, if they see me, we say hello. I'll probably forget all the names rapidly now. I used to be fantastic on the names, but look, they're accumulating.
You won't forget the feeling. That's the
no,
thing.
absolutely not. No, love it.
Boom.